On the night of October 3rd, 1999, a man named David Holloway called 911 from a payphone outside a gas station in Ashford, Kentucky. He was crying. His wife, Margaret, hadn't come home. He said he didn't know where she was. He said he was terrified. Police believed him. For 11 years, they were wrong. Margaret Holloway was 31 years old in the autumn of 1999. She worked as a school librarian in the small town of Ashford, Kentucky, a place where everyone knew everyone, and strangers were noticed. By all accounts, Margaret was quiet, careful, the kind of woman who wrote everything down. She kept journals, thick, hardcover notebooks she had filled since she was a teenager. By the time she disappeared, she had over 20 of them, stored in a locked box under the bed she shared with her husband, David. David Holloway was 36, a contractor, a man who coached Little League on weekends and attended church every Sunday. Nobody in Ashford had a bad word to say about him. The night Margaret vanished, David told police she had gone to visit a friend. That friend told police she had never received a call. She had not seen Margaret that evening. David said he must have gotten confused. He couldn't remember exactly. Police logged it as a missing persons case. They found nothing. The lead detective assigned to the case was a 44-year-old named Frank Okafor, 9 years in missing persons. He had seen cases like this before, but something about this case stayed with him. It wasn't anything David Holloway said. It was what he didn't say. In Frank's experience, husbands who had genuinely lost their wives asked the same questions over and over. Where is she? Have you checked there? What can I do? David asked those questions exactly once, and then he stopped asking. Frank noted this in his file. He interviewed David 3 times in the first week. Each time, the story was consistent. Too consistent, Frank thought privately, as if the man had rehearsed it. But there was no evidence, no body, no blood, no witnesses. The case went cold after 8 months. Frank Okafor never closed his personal file. For 11 years. David Holloway lived quietly in Ashford. He sold the house 2 years after Margaret's disappearance. He stopped coaching Little League. He still went to church. People in town mostly left him alone. Some believed he had suffered. Some privately wondered. Nobody said anything out loud. Margaret's mother, Eleanor Price, never stopped believing her daughter was dead. She also never stopped believing she knew who was responsible. Every year on the anniversary of Margaret's disappearance, she called Frank Okafor's office. And every year, Frank told her the same thing. I haven't forgotten. In 2009, David Holloway remarried. But here is the part that nobody talks about. In 2003, 3 years after Margaret disappeared, a woman came forward. Her name was Linda Cross, a waitress at a diner 12 miles outside Ashford. She told police she remembered seeing a couple arguing in the parking lot late on the night of October 3rd, 1999. A man and a woman. The woman was crying. The man had his hand on her arm. She said she almost called the police that night. Almost. But she told herself it wasn't her business. Told herself it was just a couple having a bad night. She didn't come forward until 2003 because she had moved away from Ashford. Because she saw Margaret's face on a missing persons flyer in a gas station bathroom in another county, and she recognized her. Police interviewed Linda Cross for 40 minutes. They noted her statement. They filed it. They never followed up. The man in that parking lot was never identified by investigators. Linda Cross knew what she saw, and for the rest of her life, she never forgave herself for waiting 4 years to say it. The question that nobody could answer then, and that still haunts this case now. Was that man David Holloway? And if it was, where did they go after that parking lot? Where did Margaret go? In March 2010, David Holloway's new house caught fire. A restoration crew spent 3 weeks clearing the house. During the work, a team member found something in the crawlspace beneath the master bedroom floor. A locked metal box, partially melted, but structurally intact. The box contained 22 journals. They belonged to Margaret Holloway. The box was logged, tagged, and stored in a county evidence room without being opened or examined. It sat there for 8 months. Then Eleanor Price called Frank's office for the 11th consecutive October. This time, Frank decided to pull the full case file one more time. He discovered the box had been logged. He drove to the evidence room himself. He read every journal in 4 days. The last entry, dated October 2nd, 1999, the night before Margaret disappeared, read as follows. "He knows I found the account. He came home differently tonight. I don't know what he's going to do, but I'm afraid. If something happens to me, it was David. I need to write that down somewhere. It was David." Frank Okafor sat alone in the evidence room for a long time after he finished reading the last journal. He didn't call anyone immediately. He didn't reach for his phone. He just sat there, because what the journals revealed wasn't just a name. It wasn't just, "It was David." It was a pattern, going back almost 3 years before Margaret disappeared. The journals documented something deeply disturbing. Margaret had written about David's changes in behavior. Small things at first. Coming home late without explanation. Becoming quiet when she asked about their finances. Locking his office door for the first time in their marriage. Then bigger things in January 1999, 9 months before she disappeared. Margaret wrote this. "I found a bank statement today that I was never supposed to see. The account isn't in my name. It isn't in our name. I don't know whose name it's in. I don't know how long this has been happening. I don't know who he really is." She kept investigating quietly, alone, without telling anyone. For 9 months, Margaret Holloway lived in the same house as the man she was beginning to fear. She cooked dinner with him. She went to church with him. She smiled at neighbors with him. And every night, she came home and wrote down exactly what she knew. Because Margaret Holloway understood something that most people never have to learn. That sometimes the most dangerous place in the world is the place you call home. And that the person most likely to hurt you is the one who knows exactly where you keep your secrets. Frank Okafor closed the last journal. He picked up his phone. He called the district attorney at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night. The DA picked up on the second ring. Frank said only 4 words. "I've got him. Finally." Armed with the journals and a warrant, investigators found what Margaret had found. A hidden account. $340,000. Accumulated over 6 years through fraudulent invoices. Money that would have been divided in a divorce. David had known Margaret discovered it. The timing was undeniable. David Holloway was arrested on a Tuesday morning in November 2010. He was 47 years old. He stood on his front porch in a bathrobe and said nothing as officers read him his rights. Margaret's remains were found 6 weeks later, in a wooded area 4 miles from the hiking trail where her car had been left. She had been there since October 1999. David Holloway was convicted of first-degree murder in September 2011, sentenced to life, without the possibility of parole. Eleanor Price attended every day of the trial. On the day the verdict was read, she sat very still for a long moment. Then she opened her handbag and took out a small photograph of Margaret. She held it quietly in her lap for the rest of the afternoon. Margaret Holloway wrote 22 journals over 20 years. She wrote about books she loved, students she remembered, small moments that made her happy. She also wrote the truth about the man she was afraid of. She wrote it down because she knew that writing things down mattered. Frank Okafor retired in 2013. At his retirement dinner, he said one thing: never close a file just because someone tells you the case is cold. Cold cases are just cases. Where nobody is looking yet. Margaret's locked box sat in an evidence room for 8 months. 8 months where justice waited. It waited. And eventually, it arrived.